The unquiet dead, an ancient scream in a modern world. You know the sound. It's one of our most persistent ghosts, not a rattling chain or a shadowy figure, but a sound. It's a woman's wail, drifting out of the past to chill us to the bone. We hear it in movies and around campfires, and we instinctively know what it means. The grieving mother, the betrayed lover, the spectral harbinger of doom. We hear her cry, and we get scared. But what if that scream isn't a threat? What if it's a memory? This is the story of how a forgotten Irish tradition of profound grief may have created the psychological blueprint for our most enduring specter. The Wailing Woman is a global phenomenon. Nearly every culture has a story about a female spirit, bound to this world by a sorrow so deep it echoes through time. She's often near water, usually in white, forever weeping for a loss she can't move past. She is La Llorona in Latin America, the White Lady in Europe, the Pontianak in Southeast Asia. These figures are so common, so psychologically resonant. They feel less like separate stories and more like variations on a single primal theme. To understand this archetype, to trace it back, we're not going to a haunted house. We're going to a funeral, an Irish funeral centuries ago. We're going to listen to a sound that wasn't a curse, but a sacred duty. A sound so powerful, society decided it had to be silenced. And in doing so, they may have created a ghost. Our journey begins with the lost art of keening, the sacred scream, the world of the keening woman. Long before our quiet modern funerals, grief in Gaelic Ireland had a voice, and it was loud. It was a performance, a communal, cathartic, and deeply necessary ritual known as keening, from the Irish word caoinead, which simply means to cry. But this wasn't ordinary crying. Keening was a vocal lament for the dead, an improvised, poetic, and structured form of mourning performed predominantly by women. At a wake, the Bean Cawante, the keening woman, would begin her cry. It was a sound that started as a low moan and rose into a piercing, otherworldly wail that was both beautiful and terrifying. This wasn't just screaming, it was an art form. The keener recounted the lineage of the deceased, praised their deeds, and expressed the raw, unfiltered anguish of the living. Imagine a world without obituaries, photographs, or digital footprints. The keener's song was the final, living testament to a life. She was a poet, a historian, and an emotional conduit for an entire community. In a society where the public expression of deep emotion was otherwise constrained, the keening woman gave voice to the unspeakable. Her performance gave everyone, the stoic son, the grieving neighbor, the heartbroken widow, permission to feel their sorrow in a shared space. The role of the Bean Cawant was a complicated one. Far from outcasts, these women were respected, vital parts of the social fabric. While the practice was mostly associated with women, it wasn't unheard of for men to participate. Good keeners were in demand, and some were paid for their services, which shows just how crucial their role was. They were seen as navigators of grief, practitioners of a necessary magic that helped bridge the chasm between the living and the dead. Some modern scholars even interpret the keener as a kind of psychopomp, a guide for souls. While this is a modern academic view, not a historical certainty, it speaks to the ritual's power. The idea was that this structured, powerful expression of sorrow honored the dead and helped them on their journey. For centuries, this was how Gaelic Ireland dealt with death. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't tidy. It was raw, emotional, and profoundly human. But this world and this sound, were not destined to last. The silencing. How the keener became the Banshee. The decline of keening wasn't simple. It was a slow, deliberate suppression, a cultural clash that unfolded over centuries. Starting as early as the 17th century, the Catholic Church began to discourage the practice. Clergy, influenced by more restrained European forms of worship, saw the wild, seemingly pagan lamentations as un-Christian and a disruption of the funeral mass. They viewed the rite as a rival liturgy, a folk tradition competing with the priest's authority. Condemnation from the pulpit framed the keener's art as backward, a relic that had no place in a modern, civilized Ireland. This religious pressure was amplified by the ruling English, who often viewed Irish customs with suspicion. To the English ear, the keen wasn't a song of sorrow, but a barbaric howl, further proof of the uncivilized nature of the Gaelic Irish. As English culture gained dominance, traditional Irish practices were increasingly stigmatized. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from the Great Famine in the 1840s. The famine didn't just decimate the population, it shattered the social structures that sustained traditions like keening. It broke the continuity of communities, wiped out entire families, and left a trauma so deep, the old ways of mourning felt impossible. The sheer scale of death was overwhelming. In the silence that followed, the voice of the keening woman faded. But a belief that powerful doesn't just vanish, it transforms. One compelling theory is that the cultural memory of the keening woman bled into folklore, and the respected community figure was reborn as a supernatural specter, the Banshee. The connection is a subject of scholarly debate. It's not clear if the Banshee legend grew from the memory of keeners, or if the keening ritual was modeled on an older belief in a wailing spirit. But the two are deeply linked. The name Banshee comes from the Irish Bean Sea, or woman of the fairy mound, and her defining characteristic is her cry. Like the keener, the Banshee's cry is a terrifying, mournful wail that foretells a death. But where the keener's lament was a communal service after a death, the Banshee's cry became a solitary omen that came before it. The ritual of comfort was twisted into a prophecy of doom. In some folklore, the Banshee was said to be attached to specific ancient Irish families, a detail that echoes the keener's intimate knowledge of the lineages she served. The Banshee could appear as a young woman, a stately matron, or most often, a frightening old hag with silver hair and eyes red from weeping. She was grief personified, but now it was a wild, untethered grief. The sound that once brought a community together now signaled a family being torn apart. The keening woman, a central figure for the living, was pushed into the world of the unquiet dead. Her scream, once a sacred art, was now a curse. We're on a journey from a sacred ritual to a global ghost. The story of how this silenced grief created a psychological template that still terrifies us today is just ahead. If you're fascinated by these kinds of hidden histories, take a moment to subscribe. It ensures you won't miss our future explorations into the forgotten corners of mythology and the human mind. The global ghost and psychological blueprint. The transformation of the keener into the Banshee wasn't the end of her journey. It was a beginning. The archetype of the wailing woman, forged in Ireland, proved to be an incredibly potent and portable idea. Once the figure was detached from her original ritual function and became a free-floating specter of grief, she was able to travel, mutate, and resonate with cultures all over the world. The Irish ghost went global. The most striking parallel is La Llorona, the weeping woman, a cornerstone of folklore in Latin America and the southwestern United States. The story has countless variations, but the core is terrifyingly consistent. A woman, often named Maria, is betrayed by her lover. In a fit of despair, she drowns her own children in a river. Horrified by her act, she is condemned to wander the earth forever, her presence marked by a soul-shattering cry. "Ay, mis hijos! Oh, my children!" The parallels to the Banshee are uncanny. Both are female spirits defined by a wail and associated with loss. But La Llorona's story is infused with a different history. Some scholarly theories trace her roots to pre-Hispanic Aztec goddesses like Cihuacoatl, a serpent deity said to wander the night weeping. Others see in her the ghost of La Malinche, the indigenous woman who served as Hernán Cortés's interpreter and bore his child, later becoming a complex symbol of both cultural betrayal and the mother of modern Mexico. Just as the Banshee may have emerged from suppressed keening, La Llorona seems to have risen from the ashes of a conquered world, giving voice to a sorrow that couldn't be expressed otherwise. This woman in white archetype appears everywhere, almost always tied to tragic love, betrayal, or the loss of a child. This tells us these aren't just random spooky tales. They're tapping into something deep in our collective psyche. They're a blueprint for processing our anxieties about death, grief, and unresolved trauma. So why is this blueprint so effective? Why does the sound of a woman's wail remain our most persistent ghost? First, it's the embodiment of ungrieved sorrow. The wailing woman is grief made audible. In a modern world that often expects us to move on quietly, her spectral cry is a terrifying reminder of what happens when grief isn't properly processed. It lingers. It haunts. Second, the archetype taps into a long, uncomfortable history of pathologizing female emotion. The journey from Keener to Banshee is a perfect example. A powerful, communal expression of grief, managed by women, was reframed as hysterical and dangerous. The woman who mourns publicly is seen as out of control. Her sorrow isn't just sad, it's scary. The ghost story becomes a cautionary tale. Female grief, when not properly contained, becomes monstrous. Finally, these figures resonate because they touch upon a real, documented human experience. Modern psychology uses the term bereavement sensory experiences for sensing the presence of a deceased loved one. A wide range of studies have found that a significant portion of grieving individuals, with some estimates between 30 and 60%, report seeing, hearing, or feeling the presence of the person they lost. These experiences can be comforting, distressing, or neutral, but they are a common part of the human grieving process. Think about it. A person in the depths of sorrow hears an unfamiliar sound, the wind, a fox crying out. In that vulnerable state, what's more natural than to interpret that sound through the cultural lens they've inherited? They hear the Banshee, or La Llorona. The folklore provides a narrative for a deeply unsettling but common psychological event. The story gives the inexplicable a name and a face. We started with a sound, a wail that echoes through our modern horror stories. We've traced that sound back in time, from global specters like La Llorona to the Irish omen of the Banshee and to a possible source, the sacred lament of the keening woman. The journey reveals a profound idea. Our most enduring ghost may not have been born of malice, but of mourning. She is the psychological echo of a lost tradition, a cultural memory of a time when grief had a powerful public voice, a voice that was systematically silenced. When the communal ritual was suppressed, the emotion it held didn't disappear. One theory is that it festered, transformed, and returned as a solitary, terrifying specter. The woman who once served the living by honoring the dead became one of the unquiet dead herself. So the next time you hear that scream in a film or read it in a story, remember its history. Remember the scream that chills you isn't just a sound designed to frighten. It is the ghost of a forgotten form of love. It is the sound of a sorrow so profound it refuses to be erased. It is the ancient, unquiet grief of the world, still asking to be heard. And that leaves us with one last, lingering question. If our ghosts are born from the grief we fail to process, what new specters are we creating in the silence of our own time?